big news we've had coming out from Anthropic this week because they have a new model on the blocks. This week they shipped Fable, and it's a guardrailed version of their flagship Mythos model that was released earlier this year. Now, to figure out how Fable and Mythos are connected and related, we can go a little bit into the roots of the words, because they are closely connected in the sense that fable is from Latin, fabula, a telling, a story, a tale, from fari, which means to speak, whereas mythos is a Greek word that also means word of speech or utterance. And again, it says something about something. Words very LLM centric. Now, in Greek, mythos would often be a sacred story, and over time, myth has sort of become the untamed or raw story, the one for the priesthood, the one that may not be available to the masses, whereas the fable is the children's version, more tamed with a bit of a moral attached, so all us little people can tolerate and understand it. And that is exactly the approach Anthropic has taken here, because they've shipped Mythos to the grown-ups, and then they've shipped Fable to the rest of us. And now we have Fable this week. And what is Fable? Under the hood, it is essentially the same model as Mythos, but from everything we can see, it is the most powerful model you can buy. On SweBench, which is a software engineering benchmark that they popularly use to measure these models, it scores an 80% versus GPT 5.5's 59. But it is heavily guardrailed. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the model has guardrails so that you can't use it for nefarious stuff. It does bring some side effects. I had a test to do some simple queries about my own health, and I got a biological research warning. Make of that what you want. And when you do that, the model just shuts down and replaces itself with Opus 4.8, which is also a powerful but much less powerful model. And to some extent, you can ask, why is that important and what does it mean? You could argue that it means we've hit an AI glass ceiling, where the models are now so powerful that we handicap them before we can let them into the wild. And just to keep myself honest here, Anthropic, they're saying that 95% of the sessions they run, they never hit a gate, and that the ceiling only binds at the edges. And 95% sounds like a lot, but it also means that 5% of all sessions are hitting guardrails. And if you think about how many sessions take place on these models every day, you can see it is a high number. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops. We'll talk about Fable and Mythos and Europe in context. But before we do that, I'd love to get some reactions from you guys. Andrew, you've said that the models are still just not reliable. Now, we've seen the strongest model ever here to be shipped is shipping in a handicapped version. What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting that Anthropic built a more powerful model, but they built one they don't fully trust. I'm not sure where the line lies between trusting the model and trusting the user, and just trusting their legal department, not to get them in trouble. But yeah, we're running into government's limits, not just technical limits, and the bottleneck may no longer be intelligence, although you've pointed out I don't like that word used for the transform LLM models, but confidence in releasing it. So, sometimes now sort of every AI launch sounds less like a product announcement, more like a controlled release. So yeah, I'm not sure if AI is getting sort of so much step change smarter now, but it's trying to close the gap between, what companies have built and what they're willing to let the public use. And that appears to be widening.
It is an interesting glass ceiling, isn't it? Callum, I know that, one thing is developing the model, something else is running them, all the inference, all the running cost, and inference is really where the cost lives at scale. I think you're in D-Matrix, which is a company that invests in chips for inference. Do you want to talk about what you think this means from the inference perspective and maybe the industry at large?
Yeah, and maybe I would just add one thing. Fable got jailbroken, 24 hours after launch. So human creativity and ingenuity seems to still be able to outsmart, well, at least the coders who try to put guardrails on the model. So can you really contain it? Why is everyone not having access to it anyway if it can be done that quickly? But yeah, the cost is quite phenomenal. And this is maybe only the early price to get us hooked, and isn't the real street price that we'll see as the API or it goes to sort of only usage based. I think what we're seeing with a lot of these models is that they're still being deployed on the old architecture. Yes, it's the most sort of the forefront GPU models from NVIDIA, but it's not these new, should we say, IPUs, inference-focused processors that are very much tailored to try and run these transformer-based models on. So I think we are at the start of that, and a lot of the cost comes down to, well, we can only run, they're massive, right? You're only starting to see as these new processes like dmatrix. So dmatrix simply, they move the compute into the memory. So you don't have the memory wall that involves sort of shuttling the model parameters backwards and forwards. So they claim, and this week actually they did a big announcement that they're now in full production for their new Corsair chip. And so effectively what it does is that you can make the running of it far more efficient. You can sort of either improve the latency or improve the throughput, and you can do it at far lower energy levels. So what we're seeing as these new chips move into production is other groups, so like Gimlet Labs, who are running a lot of they're trying to orchestrate a lot of these different chips, being able to package up different parts of the model processing onto the relevant chip that's required. So the dmatrix chips would do the decoding phase of the inference side, and the GPUs would do the initial part. So that's sort of where we're going to move to, but we still have to, rolling out chips is a long business. Even getting them into tape out, even post tape out. So once you've put your first chip into silicon, and if that all goes well, you have to find a random leakage current. You have to wonder why a thermal hotspot is happening in a certain area. So it just takes time to get these next generation, or I wouldn't say next generation, these new paradigms of chips out and useful. And that's maybe when we'll start to see the costs come down, but maybe we won't, because they'll allow us to be able to push the frontier of intelligence even further.